Hey class, so in this video I'm going to talk to you about how to identify the number of significant figures in a number. So, what's a significant digit? Well, a significant figure or a digit results from a measurement. You have to measure something in order to get the number of digits, right? So there are some instruments that provide more digits, and those would provide more significant figures. In a measurement, the last digit that you write is always a guess. So, in this class, we'll be using graduated cylinders a lot and digital scales a lot. And I want to show you how significant digits relate to using those tools. So in class, this is what a graduated cylinder looks like. And if you have a mark at 10 and you have a mark at 15, and you have 4 marks in between that are 11, 12, 13, and 14. And then you have your liquid, so maybe water, that's part of the way in between, halfway in between 13 and 14. You would say the measurement, because you have to guess between the lines, would be 13.4 milliliters. So you know that the 1 in the 10 is certain. You know that the 3 is certain, but you aren't really certain about that last digit. That last digit is the guess. So that last digit is always the uncertain value. But you are certain about every other digit. Similarly, if you use a digital scale, and this is going to be a top view of the scale, right? There's the part that you put the sample on, and then there's a little digital readout which tells you how much it weighs. So if it said 3.51 grams, you would notice that the 1 is the uncertain. So because when you add or take away something from a scale, you notice that the last digit is the one that changes the most. Well, the instrument is making a guess at what that last digit is. So that's the uncertain value. And you would notice that the 3 and the 5 are both the certain values. So, in both of these cases, the number of significant figures is the number of digits that are in the number. So it's 3 significant figures in both of these cases. In both the one on the right with the graduated cylinder and the one on the left with the digital scale. Notice in both cases we're using measurement and we're guessing 1 extra digit. But when you're not measuring, like you want to say how many cars are in a parking lot, right? You can actually count them. You're not using a measuring device or a ruler, for example, to say how long a car is to see that there is a car. So in that case, you're actually counting. When you count, it's an unlimited number of sig figs, right? Infinite number of sig figs when you count something. You should remember that for the quiz. Okay, so let's do some examples, then I'll give you some to try. So how do you count sig figs when there are no zeros in a number? Well, you have to know that all non-zero numbers are significant. So in this case, 3 and the 8 and 38, so that is 2 significant figures. And you see that there's an 8 and 2 and a 9, right? So that would be 3 significant figures. You see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 digits in 58,282. So that would be 5 significant figures. So what you should do right now is pause the video and try to do number 4 here. Okay, so now you take a look at this and you see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 significant figures. So hopefully you got that answer, and if you did, you know this. If you don't, you should put a question mark next to it on your paper, and we can talk about it in class. The next thing you have to know about significant figures is how to count zeros. This is the hardest part of significant figures, because there's 3 kinds of zeros. So here are the 3 definitions. The first is the leading zero. They're found in front of the number. And they are never significant. Never, ever. There's captive zeros, the ones that are found in between non-zero numbers, and they're always significant. Always, always, always. And there are trailing zeros, digits found at the end of a number. And those are significant when there's a dot anywhere in the number. It can be anywhere in the number, but that's when the trailing zeros are significant. If there's no dot, then those trailing zeros aren't significant. So let's look at a couple of examples of each. So, as I said, the leading zeros are never significant. So that means these ones up here, right? You don't count those. So that means this is 3 significant figures. Notice that this 0 is in the front, so you don't count it when you're counting significant figures. So that means this is also 3 significant figures. So at this point, you should pause the video and you should try to do number 3. Okay, so you see these zeros at the front, those are called leading zeros. They're at the front of the number. You ignore them and you would say that this is 2 significant figures. So if you got this right, then you probably are on the right track. If not, you should put a question mark next to it. Ask a question if you want at the bottom of your notes paper. Okay, and the next kind of zeros are captive zeros. They're always significant. Notice that the 0 is kind of like a prisoner of the 9 and the 1. It's stuck in between, so you have to count it. So this is 3 significant figures. Again, notice that these 2 zeros, right, are stuck in between 1 and 7. So you have to count them. Those are 4 significant figures. So pause the video and try to do number 3, and then replay the video to see if you got it right. Okay, so this is 5 significant figures because you have to count that 0 and that 0. So that's 5 digits, 5 significant figures. Okay, and the last kind of zeros you have to know are trailing zeros. Again, these are the hardest kind of zeros because they're significant sometimes. When there's a dot anywhere in the number, right, then you have to count that last 0. So notice that this number doesn't have a dot anywhere in the number. So this is only 1 sig fig. You don't count that last 0. But you see that this number does have a dot in it, right? So that means you count all of them. It's 5 significant figures. You count all the trailing zeros, that one and that one, right? You can actually move the dot, and it would still be 5 significant figures. That would be 5, and that would be 5, because it doesn't matter where the dot is. It's still, you count the trailing zeros. So pause the video and try this next one. Okay, so you see it's a trailing 0, and you see that there's a dot right there, right? And so that means that you should count it. So it's 3 significant figures, 3 sig figs, or 3 significant digits. So here's some practice questions. Try these, pause the video, and replay it when you're ready. Okay, so you notice that the first question has leading 0, so you ignore them. You see it as a trailing 0, so you have to count it because there's a dot in the number. And there's a captive 0, so you have to count that one too. So this is 4 significant figures. The next one, number 2, there is a trailing 0, but there's no dot in the number. So this has 1 significant figure. Number 3, it has a trailing 0, but you have to count it because there's a dot in the number. And it has a captive 0, so you have to count that too. So this is 4 significant figures. You see on number 4, there's a trailing 0, and it has a dot in the number, so you have to count it. And then that means you have 2 significant figures. This last one is in scientific notation. Notice there's a coefficient in the front. We'll talk more about scientific notation in the future in this class in a little while. But when something is written in scientific notation like this, you just count the number of digits over here. So that's 3 significant figures. I hope this was helpful to you in understanding how to identify the number of significant figures. Write down your questions. If you have any, you can message me. Otherwise, I'll see you in class on Monday. Thanks. Bye.